I have called you here to save our people, to save our way. Over the ages, we have known pain like no other, but we endured, and we became mighty. Now, outsiders dishonor our shores, and we have stood by, doing nothing. Hear my voice, ancestors! Show us your strength! Show us the true way! I understand. The true Makura Makoi will rise. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is SASS, and today we are discussing the new Path of Exile 2 0.3.0 update titled The Third Edict. That's right, coming out very, very soon on my birthday, actually, August 29th. We are getting a brand new season, the Rise of the Abyssal. Very, very excited for this one. They've got a ton of new changes and stuff that they're bringing to the game. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing what they have planned here. We just watched the reveal stream over on Twitch, so if you haven't yet, go and check out Path of Exile over on Twitch. They do reveal streams and dev interviews and all that kind of stuff over there, so definitely go give them a follow if you want to stay up to date on lots of Path of Exile 2 stuff. And of course, if you haven't yet, make sure you give us a subscribe over here on YouTube. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers before the end of the year, so if you'd like to stay up to date on all those patch notes and any new stuff coming to Path of Exile 2, this is the best place for it. We do regular updates on any of the changes and stuff that are coming to Path of Exile 2. So yeah, if you're interested in that, definitely hit that subscribe button. And if you're enjoying the content so far, don't forget to like. All right, without further ado, let's dive in. Let's check it out. All right, so we got a ton of new changes that are coming in 0.3.0. A big one especially is the new Act 4 is coming in. That's right, a new act for the story. Super exciting. They're getting rid of the cruel mode. We're getting new interlude acts, so there's gonna be some small stories that we'll get to do. All of the classes are getting buffed, a bunch of changes to skill gems, as well as a complete rework of the support gem system. Not to mention, of course, the new League, Rise of the Abyssal. They've got a bunch of new crafting systems, new bosses, and all sorts of cool stuff there. We got 25 new endgame maps coming in with a bunch of new monsters, new crafting changes, how all of that works, as well as the new trade system. So a ton of big changes here for 0.3.0. I'm really excited about this one. I've been waiting to see what they're actually going to do. Of course, we had a bunch of leaks and stuff like that that came out. Obviously, Some of it was true, some of it not so much true. They did add a sprint system, which is pretty cool, increases the amount of movement speed. So hopefully people will find a little bit easier to get around those big maps and whatnot. But just a ton of really cool changes, and we're going to go over all of them today. So I hope you guys are ready to rock and roll, and let's dig in. Let's dive in and see what we got here. Okay, so first up on the docket, we have the free weekend that is coming August 29th through September 1st. So if you'd like to try out Path of Exile and not get a supporter pack or anything like that, they will have it running through those weekends. Of course, all of your progress will be saved. You can play on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, all different consoles and stuff. So definitely check that out. It's going to be really, really awesome. So free weekend coming up here right at the end of the month here, August 29th through September 1st. And we have Act 4 coming. Super exciting. I've been waiting for them to add a new act here. It's been kind of a pain in the butt playing through Act 1 through 3 multiple times with Cruel and everything like that. So seeing that they are adding in a bunch of new stuff to kind of smooth that out. We've got the brand new Act 4. We're going to be heading to the Karui Archipelago, which is really, really cool. A bunch of different islands. I think there's 8 islands in total. It's a non-linear map, so you'll be able to travel around to a bunch of different areas, pick and choose which one you want to start with. There's 100 new monster types with 16 new areas in total and 12 brand new bosses that we've never seen before. So lots of content to get into there. So to get to the Karui Archipelago, this will be after Act 3. You're going to head to King's March, hire yourself a boat, and that'll float you over to the Karui Archipelago. So nice little addition to the story there. We're going to be searching for the instrument of the Third Edict. So really cool stuff. I'm really excited to dive into this. The lore and the story has been definitely a positive for me on Path of Exile 2. The end game is fun and everything, but I'm very much invested in the story of Path of Exile 2. So really cool to see that we're going to get to continue that story. Okay, next up, we have the replacement for Cruel. That's right, getting rid of Cruel. You no longer have to play through Acts 1 through 3 anymore. So after completing Act number 4, we're going to be playing 3 different mini acts, which they're calling the interludes. The first one that we'll be playing is called The Curse of Holton. We're going to be helping Renly back in Ogham after we've defeated the Count. So we're going to head back, help out the people of Holton. Apparently, the town of Ogham is getting attacked by a bunch of creepy monsters and stuff. Some zombies and stuff that are coming from the town of Holton. So we're going to be going and investigating that and try and discover the mystery of why the darkness has taken over there, all the different corruptions, and there'll be some boss battles to check out as well. So pretty cool idea. These are going to be just some short stories that we're going to get to go on and check out instead of having to play through Cruel, so that we can get up to level 65 and then move into the end game. And the second mini act, interlude number 2, that we're going to be checking out is called The Stolen Barria. So we're going to be heading back to the Vestiri Desert, which is part of the Act 2 area, helping out Asala. Apparently she is on her way to meet with the Selkari. Something goes sideways, doesn't work out very well. For some reason, the Selkari don't appear. So it is our job to go and find them and find the reason for their disappearance so that we can help her complete an ancient ritual. So really interesting stuff there. I'm excited to check that one out. I really like Asala as a character. So. And the third and final mini act is Doriani's Contingency. So this is part of the Act 3 story where we get to fight and meet Doriani. Of course, after defeating him, he tells you about some of his plans that he did to try and save the Vol from extinction. So apparently he sealed a group of Vol in the mountainside underneath, hoping that they would survive the cataclysm and basically be able to continue on the Vol descendants. So it's our job to go into the mountain and search for his descendants. And of course, traverse our way through the vault of the Vol. There's also going to be 4 bosses each in each of the mini acts. So a bunch of new bosses, a bunch of new monsters. So really a cool little short story there. And as they've been telling us, the temporary stories will be leaving after Act 5 and 6 come into the game. However, the bosses and arenas will be staying in the end game. So we're going to have 24 new bosses in total with Act 4 and the interludes all together. And next up, we have a new feature that they're adding into Path of Exile 2. Of course, one of the pain points that everybody was talking about was that the game felt a little bit too slow. Some of the maps were too big. It was hard to get around. You do a lot of backtracking. So to fix that, they've added in a new sprinting system. When you dodge roll and hold space, you'll be able to now sprint at full speed. If you get hit while sprinting, however, it will heavy stun you. So you want to use a skill to end your sprint, and you'll be able to get away from majority of the monsters that are in the game. So there aren't very many of them that will be able to keep up with you. One of the most interesting things that I think they've added here is the support gem changes. They've done a ton of support gem changes, adjusted how some of them work. They've removed support gem limits. So now you're able to use the same support gem on multiple different skills. Obviously, you still cannot stack them on the same skill. So, doing things like using martial tempo more than once on a skill you won't be able to do that either way. But being able to use martial tempo on each of your skills now to speed them up is something that you will be able to do. So basically just makes that build diversity a little bit better, allows you to be a little more creative with it. I know myself, I kind of put everything into one main skill, and that's the skill I use all the way through, at least until I find a better skill to replace it with. So this will kind of give you a little bit more freedom on how to build your character and just stretch out some of those, useful skills, but just kind of got left behind because you weren't able to support them properly. So really nice change. They've revamped the entire support gem system. I'm really excited about this change. I think it's going to create a lot of build diversity. So definitely a positive for sure. Big W's GGG. Another big change with the support gems is they've changed the tiers of support gems. So all of the support gems now will have 5 different tiers to them with different levels. So you're going to have like level 1, level 2 of level 3 of different support gems, so that you can progress throughout the game and slowly increase your power on your support gems, which is a really nice touch because closer towards the end game, you're going to find that some support gems just really don't do a whole lot. Whereas now it's going to make it a lot better to get those higher level supports towards the end of the game. So nice little touch here, just kind of spreading things out and making that progression just feel a little bit better. And of course, they've also added some really interesting, unique support gems. So these are called lineage support gems. They are special chase support gems that we're going to be looking for in the end games. They only drop from bosses and rares in the end game. I believe you can find them in crates as well. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find them there too. But definitely bosses drop them. They're going to have unique abilities that they can give you. They've got some really cool stuff with them. So basically, this is like a unique item support gem for your skills, which is just going to either change your skill or boost it immensely. So really cool idea that they added here. And there are 40 lineage supports in total, so a ton of new support gems to find in the late game. So really nice touch here. I'm super excited to go and chase all of these because they're going to be really awesome. And of course, with all of the support gem changes, there's got to be some skill gem changes as well. So a ton of skill gems have received buffs. They've changed the way some skill gems work. And they did go over some of these in the live stream, which I'll kind of summarize here. A big one that I'm really excited about that they kind of nerfed in 0.1. When they switched from 0.1 to 0.2, they nerfed the way that cold worked with all the explosions and stuff. They've now buffed that again. So cold buffs now have more chaining abilities and a better upgrade for when you freeze a boss. So normally when you freeze a boss, it would only last for, I think, about 3 or 4 seconds. They've now increased that to 8 seconds now for freezing, burn, and shock to last. So 8-second ailment is now the standard for all of those. So really nice little change there. Very excited to test out my Frostmonk again and see if I can take him to the next level. Another skill change that they made is new poison skills. So they buffed a bunch of the poison skills, made them a little bit better. They've also added few new ones, so that way if you are creating a poison build, you're going to have a lot more variety to play with. And they got some really cool stuff. One that's very similar to like Blood Boil on the Huntress, where it like creates these little poison pustules all over the monsters. And yeah, lots of really cool stuff that they've added for poison. They've also buffed the electrocute arrow, increased the chance of electrocution and stuff there. They've changed the reserve on the Mirage Archer. So now you'll be able to create those little copies, the Shadow Archer copies, and it's going to cost you a lot less out of your total spirit. So hopefully that'll help you with, getting some decent soul gems and still being able to run those as well as with running the Mirage Archer. So nice little change there. Another big change that they've made is they buffed evasion. They've also added a new mechanic to it. So this new deflect mechanic that they've created is based off of the amount of evasion that you have. So you gain a certain percentage of deflect based on your evasion levels. You can deflect any hit except for the boss's red attacks. So like the big heavy attacks, you won't be able to deflect those, but the average attack is going to be able to be deflected. There is no limit to the amount of deflect that you can get. So if you keep stacking dex and evasion, you can basically end up with more than 100% deflect, which is a really cool idea. Just makes those evasion builds a little bit better. You definitely feel very squishy if you are playing like a ranged dex character. So hopefully this is going to help out a lot. Another big change that they've made to defenses is by blocking and parrying. So block and parry were both kind of on the weak side, not really all that useful, but they've now buffed them to every attack is now blockable, except for obviously the red boss attacks. You also move faster while using the block ability and parry ability. And of course, in turn, because they've increased the ability of block, they've had to lower your maximum passive block, which is a pretty good trade-off when you think about it, because now we can move faster while blocking and parrying, and we can pretty much block and parry anything, which is a great touch. And this is one of my favorite changes so far. I love the fire skills for the warrior. I think it's a really cool addition. It just adds some really neat flair. They buffed a whole bunch of the fire skills and added a bunch of new skills. So Volcanic Fissure now will branch off into multiple different fissures. They've also added a new skill called Forge Hammer, which is basically Thor's hammer that you can just like whip at somebody from a distance and it creates this fire explosion. You can then follow that up with a war cry, which then explodes into a whole bunch of volcanic fissures. Now, those volcanic fissures you can then trigger by slamming on top of them and make them launch more fire out. So really cool addition there. They've also increased the AoE on Perfect Strike to make that a little bit more effective, and Molten Blast you no longer have to move forward with, and just overall increased the amount of ignite that all fire skills do. So big W for anybody playing the fire warrior. It's gonna be a lot of fun to check that one out. They've also added a new glory skill. So Ancestral Cry is now charged by a glory. So every time that you ignite a character, it will increase your glory, which then charges up your Ancestral Cry, and then that boosts all of your follow-up skills from there. Really neat idea here. I like this as like an extra kind of side, almost like a soul gem skill, but a little bit more maneuverable. So, and finally we have shield skill buffs. That's right, the warrior is definitely going to be the class to play in 0.3.0 because they've increased pretty much all of the shield skills. Shield charge now has no cooldown at all. You can shield charge as much as you like. The shield wall has increased its AoE, so it is a wider wall, as well as you can trigger that wall to explode using your shield war cry. You can also it also buffs all of your skills, and your magma barrier while using your shield now doesn't include a timing moment. You just have to charge it up and then hit the block button to activate when you get hit. And we've got a new war cry called Seismic Cry, which stuns primed enemies, which is a really cool addition. They've also taken Sunder and Armor Break and kind of merged them together so that anytime that you break armor now, it adds extra damage for physical damage to characters that are sundered, as well as armor broken. So they've also boosted the Ancestral Warrior Totem, so you can basically have no limits on as many of those totems as you want, and instead they just use 3 endurance charges per each, and also scales with your weapon damage. So if you want to, you could have a whole army of ancestral warriors. So nice little touch there, making the warrior kind of a minion caster, which is really interesting. They've also upgraded all of the totems. Answered Call now has a big buff to it. You're going to have a lot stronger minions being called in from that. They've also merged Great Wolf Howl and Warcaller, which was on one of the warrior ascensions. So they merged those together so you get both skill abilities there. And they've also given a big buff to Encased in Jade. You will no longer lose your Jade armor when you get hit. Instead, it will just last for a certain amount of time. So nice little touch there just to make the warrior an even more fun class to play. So, and continuing on with the warrior, we've also got some accuracy changes. So accuracy is now something you no longer have to worry about with a warrior. When you are up close range against enemies, your accuracy no longer applies. You will nearly always hit when you are at close range with a warrior. So now we don't have to worry about trying to get accuracy stats on our armor and weapons and things like that. So, and of course, the big one that everybody's been complaining about, armor has been improved. They've added now elemental damage mitigation rolls to all of the armor that you find, as well as added a bunch of elemental damage mitigation to the passive trees, so that you can boost more than just physical damage mitigation with your armor. So, and moving on to the mercenary, we've got some pretty cool mercenary buffs. They've changed the way that reloading works for the mercenary. So now you can reload without a movement penalty. So you no longer have to stand still while doing that. And any other skills that need a reload or recharge animation, you will no longer move as slow with those. So that is across the board with all of the classes. And we've heard a lot of talk from GGG about skill combos, which is something that they want players to be doing, to be comboing your skills from one to the next. They've actually done a bunch of really interesting buffs to try and to basically increase the want to be able to do something like that. So as mentioned before, Shock, Freeze, and Burn now have 8-second durations. You also gain extra damage bonuses, which have been increased for every detriment that you put on an enemy. Ice explosions can now chain from enemy to enemy. So if you explode ice, that will now freeze the next one, and so on and so forth. So kind of going back to what we had in 0.1. The other really cool addition that they did is high velocity arrows can now shatter armor, and basically creates like this broken armor hovering around the enemy, and then any follow-up shots you make with that can spread that shattered armor and damage other enemies. So a really nice touch just to turn the mercenary into just a much more viable character to play. Gives you a little more variety with some of your skills. So, and continuing on with the mercenary, they've also added a brand new crossbow skill that is called the Mortar Cannon. That's right, the Mortar Cannon, which is really cool. Basically what you do is you activate this skill, and then you can socket grenade skills into the Mortar Cannon. It will then place the mortar on the ground and then launch grenades based on whatever you've socketed in there. So you could put a fire grenade and a gas grenade and just start launching stuff, so that it's doing all of that while you continue to play. They've also boosted banners to last a lot longer. They will no longer disappear when you roll away from them. So if you leave the banner zone, you can always step back into it again. And banners also now only require glory to place, which is a really nice change that hopefully will give the mercenary their maneuverability back. And moving on to one of my favorite builds in the game, the minion build. They buffed a whole bunch of abilities for the minions. Any of your minions that use melee attacks will no longer acquire require accuracy to use. So when they swing, they will always hit, which is a huge buff for minions. I really like that they've changed this. They've also buffed the Brute, which has a bunch of damage buffs and stuff like that, but also has a new ability that you can activate for him where he will war cry and freeze enemies around him. Another really neat addition is the Frost Mage adds ice armor to all of your minions as they're running around, and an even better addition is that the Brute can use their war cry to explode that ice armor and then freeze even more enemies. So a really cool touch how they basically turned the minions into this giant army of like ice abilities, which is super cool to see, and I'm really excited to try that out. Another big buff that they've done to the minion builds is by changing Unearthed skill to be able to respawn your skeletons. So if you have skeletons that have died on the field of battle, you can activate Unearthed, and that will bring them back to life without having to wait for the timer. Really nice little change there. They've also changed some of the spirit cost for Raised Spectre to make them a little bit stronger, and also increased their damage as well. I know that the specters were something that were kind of weak and not very useful in the game, so nice to see that they've managed to change that, and hopefully it's balanced well so that you can use specters again. We've actually got some really cool weapons that they've added now. Some new staffs for the sorcerer. And a really cool one that they showed off was the reaping staff, which is able to cull low health enemies to heal yourself as well as cause critical weaknesses. So a really cool little addition to the stabs there. And they've also done some balancing and adjustments to some of the ascendancies. One that was highlighted here was the Blood Mage ascendancy for the Witch. They've now added Sanguimancy as a free skill, so you'll be able to pick 2 extra skills when you get your first ascendancy points. And another change that they made was to the Infernalist demon form for the Witch. The weapon stats now apply to your demon form. They've also increased some of the Monk Wind skills. You can now use Staggering Palm and the effects of its stack, that you can increase the duration of your wind boost. And they've also changed Wind Blast. So Wind Blast used to build up with daze, and now it just dazes on hit, which is a really nice change so that you can stun a little bit faster. They've also changed a vaulting impact and the way it works. Now, once you have fully dazed a character, you hit with vaulting impact and it will break their stance, allowing you to do increased damage during that stance break. So similar to heavy stun, nice little change for the monk there. And they've also added a new monk skill, the hand-to-hand combat hollow palm technique, which is really cool. You can now live out that fantasy of becoming Jackie Chan. So with hollow palm technique, all of your quarterstaff skills can now be used while unarmed, and you also gain bonuses to damage for stacking evasion and energy shield. So a really cool addition to the monk right there. And another addition for the monk and their hand-to-hand skills, they've also added Walker of the Wilds, which allows you to mana leech using elemental damage rather than just physical damage. And the Acolyte of Chayula is getting a really cool buff as well, adding the ability for chaos damage to ignite, shock, and freeze at random. Additionally, they've also added another ascendancy passive called the Sap of Nightmares, which allows you to leech while using chaos damage rather than just physical damage. Into the Breach has also gotten a nice little buff as well, increasing the damage bonus received from that. Another really cool ascendancy passive that was added is called Grasp of the Void, which allows you to create void illusion bombs when dodge rolling. These explode with massive chaos damage. And don't worry, they did not forget about the Sorceress either. You can now use multiple elements at once, and it is a completely viable build. They've combined all of the elemental curses into a single curse, so it will now cause weakness to all different elemental types rather than just the one type. Also changed how most of the exploding elemental spells work, so like things like Frost Bomb, they no longer cause cold exposure. It now does elemental exposure instead, which allows you to do extra damage with all different types of elements. Continuing on with that sorceress variety, They've also made weapon sets swap instantly, so there is no delay between swapping from one staff to the other. This also applies to all different classes, not just the sorceress. They've also added a new feature for the sorceress and the elemental spells as well. In keeping with that elemental variety, specific skills now drop something called elemental infusions. When picking these up, they will buff your next skill you use with a specific element. So now you're able to use fire spells that cause freezing, freezing spells that cause electrocution, and other really cool bonuses that way, depending on which skill that you're using. Each one also has a unique effect that gets applied to it, adding some really cool elemental variety to your sorceress. Orb of Storms also generates lightning infusions when you cast spells next to it. Now this counts for any type of elemental spell, not just lightning spells. So they've changed how it worked before, allowing you to go, as Jonathan says,
full Palpatine.
The Living Bomb spell also drops fire infusions, allowing you to infuse fire abilities with a number of different spells, such as using Comet to infuse with fire to drop a massive nuke on top of enemies, or using Firestorm, which then becomes a huge rain of fire down on top of your enemies. Or even better, infuse lightning, fire, and ice into your Firestorm to create a maelstrom of elements. Cold Snap has also been changed. It is now just called Snap. You are now able to detonate all ailments with Snap, as well as any of the orbs, and by detonating these orbs and ailments, it will also drop infusions for that specific element. Also got some really interesting passive tree keystones for the sorceress that are coming in. The Black Flame Covenant is one of note, where it turns all of your ignites into chaos damage and gives them a really interesting little purple flare to them. As well as a Ritual Cadence is another one, which allows your invocations to trigger more than once over a certain period of time, rather than just triggering once more. Also done a ton of huge passive tree changes for almost all of the classes. I believe almost every class has a new passive tree change, with 100 new notable skills, about 20 per class. As you can see here, this is the old tree and then the new tree. So they've changed a ton of stuff and added a whole bunch of new nodes to the passive tree so that you can create the ultimate character. We also added a whole bunch of really interesting thematic nodes to this passive tree. Something such as Molten One's Gift, which allows you to combine armor break and fire damage. We've got Last Stand, which buffs you as your health gets lower and your situation gets more dire. We've got something like Crystallized Immunity for the Gemling Legionnaire, which allows you to gain immunity to specific elements depending on what ratio of color support gems you have. They've also added Sanguimatic Rituals, which allows the Blood Mage to Arcane Surge for health points rather than for mana. So, of course, we've got the Sorceress, where they've added in these things called Archon Nodes, which are really, really interesting. They allow you to convert all of your elemental damage to a specific element. So depending on your lightning, cold, or fire, whichever you choose, you just have to meet specific requirements while in battle for those abilities to trigger. There's also another one called Elemental Practitioner, which gives you crit bonuses if you triggered specific skills. Or something like the Great Boar, which allows you to stack up dexterity to increase your health pool as well as your stun threshold. And one of my favorites that I've seen so far that they've shown off, something called Cunning Fox, which is really neat. Gives you 5% increased quality to all of your gems. So obviously there's a ton of really, really cool stuff that you can find on the passive tree now, which is something that really excites me because I like building new characters. I like starting new characters. So the fact that they've given us all of this really interesting thematic and crazy, crazy ways to just build insane characters makes me that much more excited for 0.3. Another massive change that they've made to all skills across the board is reducing attribute requirements by 25%. So in this way, we're going to have to spend a lot less passive points on attributes and more on really, really cool passives. All right, time to dive into the new league for 0.30, Rise of the Abyssal. This looks amazing. The monsters and all of the really interesting NPCs that you're going to get to meet at Clearfell and onward are blowing me away. This is a really nice addition for a new league. Obviously, since we're not getting a new character, they're going to have to add in a bunch of really cool stuff for us to check out. So you'll learn about the Abyssal in Act 1 when you're at Clearfell. You're going to be talking to a new NPC. We'll give you a quest to go and check out some of the abyssal pits nearby. There you will find these fissures that are connected to abyssal pits. Local enemies nearby are being affected by these pits, and you have to kill them so that the pits will basically eat up the souls of those enemies, which are then turned into abyssal monsters, which will spew forth from the abyssal pits. Once you've killed all of those abyssal monsters, those fissures will close and then activate the pit, which will spit out even more monsters. Of course, depending on the type of monsters that you happen to have in the area, when you do close these fissures, will change the type of abyssal monsters that will come out of the pits. So if you kill a magic pack, you're going to end up with some magic abyssal monsters, rare monsters, and so on and so forth. Upon killing all of the remaining abyssal monsters that have come out of the abyssal pit, you will then be rewarded with an abyssal trove, which holds some really interesting and unique items that you can only find in the abyssal pits. So definitely keep an eye out for those, because you are going to be wanting to complete these as much as possible so that you can collect some of the new items and currency. Another really cool feature for the new league is modifiers. Monster modifiers specifically will now be affected by the pits as well. So if you kill a rare monster, for example, when they are reborn from the pit, they will have a chance to become something unique, becoming an abyssal modifier. So definitely keep an eye out for interesting monster modifiers there. And modifiers are not the only thing that can be affected by the abyssal pits. Other mechanics, such as the rogue exiles, can also be affected. If you happen to kill one of them near a pit, they will be reborn as a lichborn. The lichborn have a chance to drop unique jewels as well as other really interesting loot items. If you happen to get lucky enough to kill a boss near an abyssal pit, they will spawn a Giga Larvae, which is this massive abyssal monster that is absolutely terrifying. And not only that, but essences themselves can also become abyssal, which provides some really interesting bonuses to crafting. This is not the only addition that the Abyssal League is bringing. By completing abysses, you'll be able to find a new type of item called Lich Bones. You can use these similar to the way that you use an orb to imbue your weapons with abyssal modifiers. However, these modifiers are hidden until you find a new area in Act 4 called the Well of Souls. Upon finding the Well of Souls, you'll be able to reveal the modifiers that are on your weapons. Now, this doesn't grant you just a single random modifier, however, gives you a selected choice of 3 mods. So some of them are really, really unique and really interesting, and hopefully this is going to give us a little bit more deterministic crafting when we are trying to power up some of our weapons, especially going into the end game. A lot of the end game mods are quite unique, so definitely collect up those Lich Bones, because you're going to want to power up those weapons as you get further and further into the end game. Of course, the Well of Souls not only can be used on weapons and armor and other things like that, but you can also use it to craft waystones. By using a preserved vertebrae, you'll be able to imbue your waystones with specific abyssal modifiers as well. Of course, this allows you to choose from one of 3 mods, just like with your weapons and armor, and give you some really unique abilities like increased amounts of abyssal pits, as well as some really powerful ones like your final abyssal pit in a map, always leading to a boss encounter. In addition to the abyssal troves that you can find by closing abyssal pits, you can also find unique areas called the Abyssal Depths, which feature an abyssal city with tons of abyssal mobs that you can take down. All of the rare abyssal enemies in the Abyssal Depths will have abyssal mods attached to them, and some rares can even have Lichborn mods, which can lead to some high-risk, high-tier rewards, as well as some of those really unique lineage support gems. course, these lineage supports are not the only rewards you can find. They've also added in some new omen-like abyssal items that allow you to increase the ability of your crafting, as well as some really cool, unique socketables that you can use to increase your weapon and armor power. Of course, these unique socketables are a special that you can only use one in your character at a time. In your endgame Abyssal Depths encounters, you will now have the opportunity to find something called an Abyssal Spire, which features an Abyssal Commander that is using this area to try and shroud a reclassed in darkness. These Abyssal Spires feature 4 unique bosses with special unique items that can drop, such as this really cool belt that includes sockets that count as specific armor types, such as armor and helmets. So definitely keep an eye out for those in the endgame. They've also added a League unique jewel that you can find called Undying Hate. This jewel can be socketed into your passive tree, transforming it into an abyssal tree, allowing you to embrace the power fantasy of becoming part lich. And one of the last and probably coolest things that you can find from the Abyssal Commanders is something called a Finger of the Lich. Now, taking this finger back to the Well of Souls will allow you to jump into the Well of Souls for yourself, allowing you to earn some truly unique and mysterious bonuses. All right, on to the end game changes. So there's a bunch of new stuff that they added in for the end game. We've got 25 new end game maps being added in. This is all of the new maps from Act 4, as well as the interlude stories. So all of those areas are now part of the endgame maps, as well as the new monsters and bosses that have all been added. Now, of course, because these new bosses are pretty special and really, really interesting, they decided to do something a little bit different this time around, and they've added in some new almost pinnacle boss areas. So you'll be able to find things like a wild sandstorm that you'll have to reveal to run these near pinnacle maps, the giant maelstrom as well. You have to run the maps around the area to find a beacon so that you can open up that boss area, as well as a Val vault that you run the maps around nearby, and you will reveal a key that you can use to get into the vault, where you will be able to fight some Vol Elite, earn some really cool rewards. These will be similar to like the Uber bosses and whatnot that we've seen before, just not quite as crazy as Arbiter. So yeah, just kind of to ease you into doing some of those boss battles and stuff like that. So of course, these can earn you some really interesting item drops and whatnot, as well as a chance to find some of those lineage supports. So definitely something to watch out for in the end game. Another cool addition that we've seen added in for the end game is some maps will create a summoning circle that you can activate to spawn in bosses and earn unique rewards as well. We've also made some pretty major changes to the way that waystones work as well. Waystone affixes have now been changed from being a prefix being a good affix and a suffix being a bad affix. We've now removed this and returned to the PoE1 style of waystones, where all affixes have both a positive and a negative towards them. So your difficulty will ramp up with your reward ramping up as well. So hopefully this will lead to a lot less issues of where your waystones were just becoming out of control and not really leading to very many rewarding maps. We've also changed how Breach, Ritual, and Pinnacle will work. Before, you would have to complete the Pinnacle bosses before moving on to your League Atlas tree. Now you will be able to spend 2 points in the League Atlas tree before facing the Pinnacle bosses. You'll simply need to complete a quest of some kind, whether that be to find and kill a boss, to unlock the ability to put those points in. So this just kind of gives you a little bit cleaner of a track to move you towards that Pinnacle content. Running the pinnacle content has also become a lot easier and much more streamlined. You will no longer be required to use a specific key to unlock that pinnacle content at the realm gate. Instead, now you will be collecting splinters for each of the pinnacle contents. You can then take those splinters to the realm gate and spend a specific amount of splinters depending on the difficulty level you wish to complete. GGG is hoping that this will ease more people into spending their splinters on actually running the content rather than before, where it was a lot more efficient to just sell the key to someone who could run it at the highest level. Of course, with these changes, the Atlas tree for each of the contents now no longer affects the difficulty of that content, but instead affects the amount of that content or how it will appear on your maps. Now, the Arbiter of Ash works slightly differently. Of course, you still need to find crisis fragments to use on the base level Arbiter. These can be found from the usual Citadel bosses that we fought before. However, to fight the Uber Arbiter, you're going to need some Calamity fragments. Now, these can also be found from the Citadel bosses, but only once you have completely filled your boss Atlas tree to its maximum, ensuring that when you do fight the Uber Arbiter, they are at their peak difficulty and reward. GGG has also decided to smooth out the leveling curve when you reach the later levels of endgame, making it much easier to hit level 95 and onwards. Of course, to help out with this, they've also added in a number of really interesting, unique items. A few of note is one called the Thunder Fist, which is going to go along with the hand-to-hand combat that we are getting for the monk. It creates an ability called Crackling Palm, which will launch lightning bolts down from the sky, shocking everything that you hit. Another really interesting unique is called Hinakora's Sight. This will give you the ability of Foresight, where your dodge roll no longer avoids a hit while rolling, but instead restores you to full life and leaves you invulnerable for a short time, leaving behind an imprint of your other self that takes the full brunt of the hit and dies, basically giving you a look into the future of what might have been. We also made some pretty drastic crafting changes specifically to essences, where they were finding that the lesser essences especially were quite weak. They've now been changed to work more like a regal orb and add specific modifiers to your weapons. This will also help with the bottlenecking we've seen of a lack of regal orbs during the campaign, and also add in a lot more deterministic crafting. They've also added in multiple different tiers for essences as well, where these deterministic values will increase when moving up from lesser to greater essences. We've also added in a new tier of essences as well, called a Perfect Essence. These will work similarly to a Chaos Orb, replacing one of your mods with a specific mod as described by the essence. These, of course, will include not only stronger versions of the previous essences, but also include some unique modifiers and bonuses as well. Continuing with the crafting changes, they've also added in greater and perfect versions of the Orbs of Transmutation, Orb of Augmentation, as well as Regals, Chaos Orbs, and other versions of currency as well. These newer greater and perfect levels for orbs will increase the floor level that your modifiers can roll at, ensuring that all of your endgame crafting is giving you the best possible chance at a high roll for your weapons, armor, and other items. Of course, with all of these shiny new currencies to spend, you're also going to need some shiny new base items to spend them on. GGG has seen fit to add in exceptional items to the drop pool. These exceptional items will have a chance for increased quality up to 30%, as well as increased sockets, which you can then Chaos Orb to increase the socket level once again. You can also find exceptional versions of unique items as well. Of course, with all the changes to crafting, they've also changed a few of the omens, removing some of the less impactful ones and adding some very interesting, unique omens as well. few of note here, the Omen of the Ancients, which allows your next Orb of Chance to not destroy the item. However, it will create a random item of the same class. Another interesting one is the Omen of Sanctification. Special Omen allows for a higher maximum on your modifiers for rare items when using a Divine Orb. You also have a chance to become sanctified. Sanctified items are similar to corrupted items that once the item is sanctified, you will no longer be able to continue crafting that item, so use them wisely. Or how about the Omen of Chaotic Monsters? This omen can be used in conjunction with a Chaos Orb, allowing you to reroll all modifiers on a Waystone. Of course, these are just a few of the omens that GGG's decided to show off. There are still tons more to find out there, so prepare yourself for some really interesting endgame drops. And quite possibly the largest addition that they've added to crafting is a new crafting material called Hanakora's Lock. When activated, it will show you the exact outcome of your next used crafting orb. So using Exalts will now show exactly what modifiers you will get, as well as the percentage chance of them rolling, giving you even more deterministic crafting, which is something that a lot of people in the community have been asking for. And finally, it's time to discuss the new trade system for Trade League. GGG is introducing asynchronous trade, which allows you to find the items you're looking for on the Path of Exile website. Once you've found the item you're looking for, you can select a teleport button, which will teleport your character to a hideout. You can buy those items directly from another player. By using this new system, you will no longer have to check if a player is online or at their hideout. You can purchase any item that they have placed into their trade box by simply using whatever currency they have it listed as well as a small amount of gold to complete the purchase. You will automatically be notified of a sale when the item is sold, and you can return to your hideout to collect that currency. Upon completing Act 4 in King's March, you will meet a new NPC called Ange the Trader. This new NPC can be invited to your hideout, where she will handle all of your currency exchange as well as handling trade automatically. You can drop items into Ange's trade box and she will trade items to other players automatically for you. Using the merchant tabs that she has on hand, you can also exchange your premium stash tabs that you were using before for trade and turn them into more of Ange's merchant tabs if you wish. Of course, these premium stash tabs will only be transferable if you purchase them before the launch of version 0.3. And as GGG have stated, the old system of trading will still work perfectly fine, so if you would like to continue using just the plain premium stash tabs to trade directly with other people, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Both trade systems will work side by side, with the new trade system working in the background, so you no longer have to be in-game at your hideout or even online to make a sale. Well, I gotta say, there are a ton of new changes coming for this new league. I'm very excited to dive into it. I think it's going to be an amazing season. They've done some massive changes to crafting, to skills, to basically every aspect of the game, where this is going to feel like a brand new Path of Exile 2. So I hope you guys are excited as I am. As you can see in the background here, we have some really cool new supporter packs coming in. So if you'd like to support the devs, now is a great time to do so. You can get yourself some really cool in-game cosmetics. I'm pretty stoked to try this out. It is once again releasing on August 29th, 2025. So if you haven't had a chance yet to try it out, make sure you jump on between the 29th and the 1st of September so that you can get in on the free-to-play weekend. And if you'd like to see some gameplay and hang out with the community, of course, we are doing my big birthday bash. The Superathon is going to be happening on August 29th and August 30th, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on both nights. We're going to be running for 12 hours straight, long into the morning. So if you'd like to come and play some games and hang out with us, We will be live over on the SASS Entertainment Twitch channel as well as on the YouTube channel. So definitely mark that date, August 29th, 2025, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be playing a whole bunch of games with the community, having a blast. I've got a big lineup lined up for us. And then later in the evening, we will be checking out the new update for Path of Exile 2.0.3.0. So I'm quite excited to check out all of the new changes and everything and try out a new character. We do have some new votes up on the Twitter channel as well as on YouTube and the Discord. So if you haven't yet, make sure you pop over to the Discord and join us there, where you can stay up to date on everything SASS. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you could help us get there, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, I think that's about it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a lot longer than what I normally do, but there was a ton of stuff to cover and a ton of really cool changes that I wanted to show off. If you haven't had a chance yet to go and check out the reveal stream, definitely pop over and check that out. It is up on their Twitch and YouTube channels. Definitely go give GGG some love because they definitely deserve it. They pulled out all of the stops for this one. We do have some really cool news coming out over the next little while. We've gotten a confirmation that Druid will be coming in 0.4 in December, and the asynchronous trade system will also be coming to Path of Exile 1 in the future if everything goes smoothly here. I think that's all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Of course, it helps in the algorithm. Let me know down below in the comment section, what are you most excited about with the new Third Edict update? Would love to hear from you. This has been another Path of Exile 2 update with SASS Gaming News. I've been SASS. Thank you all for watching. We will see you next time. Happy hunting, Exiles.